Cool, Rob Sand. Rob, thanks for joining me.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So we have seen a lot of really exciting moves in Iowa as it relates to these recent special elections. The latest one showed the Democratic candidate Caitlin Dray winning by about a 20-point margin, different from what we saw in 2024. So first and foremost, what's happening in Iowa, and is it as red as I think we've been led to believe?
Yeah, two really good questions, and I've got some very specific answers to them. As state auditor, you can imagine I'm kind of a numbers guy, so I'll give you some numbers. But credit to Caitlin, number one, right? She worked really hard,
Yeah,
but we've had a couple of really hardworking candidates, and Iowans are fed up, is the bottom line. So a lot of people are reading about the race that Caitlin just won, more than a 20-point overperformance from the expectation from the presidential race last fall. But that is the fourth race, the fourth special election in Iowa this year, and every single one of them have seen that 20-point overperformance, every single one, which I think, and somebody should audit me on this, I think that puts us as having four of the top five overperformances in the nation, and we've
yeah.
only had four special elections. So, and I think that goes to say, like Iowa isn't uh, a state where people want to be defined by a color. We are a state where, people look at the map and they're like, oh, the Republicans won, but we lost the closest congressional race in American history in 2020. We lost the closest congressional defense for an incumbent Democrat in 2022. And then we had the highest overperformance, closest loss for a Democratic challenger in 2024, right? And then for the statewide down ballot races, out of six races for statewide state office in 2022, me and the attorney general and the state treasurer all hit at least 49% of the vote. So
Yeah.
half of Iowans went for three Democrats, three Republicans. This is not a state where people are allergic to voting for Democrats.
And so, with the recent announcement from Senator Joni Ernst that she's not running for her Senate seat, what does that say about the broader environment right now in Iowa?
I, I think she can read the writing on the wall,
Yeah.
right? Um, I think that she understands. Like, people here are fed up, people are fired up. I don't have a window into her thinking, but I think it's a good sign in general. As you know, open seats are an opportunity for voters to really think about direction. Someone saying I'm hanging it up. Well, you got a real choice to make, and I think that's good.
In your conversations with voters, and I'm specifically interested in folks who didn't or don't usually vote for Democrats, but how have those conversations gone? And I ask this because so much of how people think about voting, their political affiliation is often so closely aligned with their own identity, and I think that's by design, right? Like politicians want people to think like, okay, I'm an Iowan, I'm an American, I'm a Republican, because it makes it that much more difficult to pull them away from just voting for any Republican, any person with an R next to their name when they get to the ballot box, because that's who they are. And so how has that kind of manifested itself in your conversations with voters?
I always go back to this. People say, "Oh, how did Iowa change after going for Barack Obama twice to go for Donald Trump three times?" Iowa didn't change. Those two guys have one important thing in common. They're both people who challenged their party's orthodoxy and said that they were going to do politics differently. And that resonates with a lot of Iowans. We actually have a pretty proud tradition in Iowa, even going back past that, with government reform things where we have said we don't like politics as usual. Um, and so when I look at that, when I'm talking to Iowans, we're seeing people come out of the woodwork saying we like Rob Sand's campaign for governor. Uh, I was walking around in a mall and had a guy who had never voted in his life. He's 28 years old. He said, "I'm going to register to vote for you because I believe in the message that we should be bigger than Democrats versus Republicans, which
Yeah.
is the heart of this campaign." I mean, if we've got a slogan, it's not redder or bluer, but better and truer. Um, there's a man who was in Governor Kim Reynolds' cabinet until very recently, who was recommended for that job by U.S. Senator Joni Ernst, who wrote an op-ed about how disgusted he is with the state of politics in America. But he says Sand's campaign for governor is talking about doing something about this in a way that even me even as someone who's cynical and frustrated, thinks is very real and very genuine. And he's right. And then after the special election, um, the Iowa Republican Party criticized the local Republicans, and they stood up for themselves. They said, "No, we've worked really hard." And a county supervisor from up there, a Republican, put a video out and said very plainly, whether you're Democrat, Independent, or Republican, the policy that's coming out of Des Moines is garbage.
Yeah.
And he spoke for 2 minutes about the gutting of the auditor's office, right? We had found a record amount of misspent money in my first term as the state auditor. And the answer to that from the insiders in Des Moines was literally pass a law to make it easier to hide misspent money from the auditor's office, right? And this guy's just going off on that. And he said he thinks I'm going to win the race. I just think that people have been looking at what's going on in Des Moines with 10 years of Republican control, and they are fed up. And that's not exclusive to Democrats and independents. It's a lot of Republicans too. And I think the way I think about it, it tends to be more of like, this is really a question of insiders versus outsiders, or public servants versus politicians. And people are starting to, I think, see it more as that rather than just the Democrat or Republican piece of identity that you're talking about.
You'd mentioned this idea of doing things differently. What does that look like for your campaign?
I mean, number one, this is differently than most politicians, but I've been doing it every year since I ran the first time. I do 100 public town halls every single year. I tell people in advance that we're coming. And so this year we actually announced all 100 stops on the same day, like a rock band. Here's our tour all the way through October. And, we say Democrats, Independents, Republicans, everybody's welcome. We start the events by actually having people raise their hand for their party affiliation. We clap for each other, and then we sing the first verse of America the Beautiful together.
Yeah.
It's really wonderful. But the bigger piece of that to me, I think, is the way I've done the work in the office of the state auditor. The most senior positions in the office I filled with an independent and a Republican who had made campaign contributions to my opponent. But I want to have people around who think differently than me, because I think that's actually helpful. We have done more to criticize people in my own party or defend people in the other party when it's the right thing to do than anybody else in the state. And I think people notice that. So if you ask Iowans, how's the state auditor doing? 2/3 of them will have an opinion of that. And of the people who have got an opinion, 80% say they like the work that we're doing.
Yeah. Rob, how does this moment in particular, in the aftermath of the Biden presidency, but also watching, a lot of septuagenarians and octogenarians either announce their retirements or pass away in office? I mean, starting from Ruth Bader Ginsburg to Jerry Connolly. Obviously, Biden's age was a huge issue in this last election. How does the idea of generational change make you think about this moment that you're in right now?
I think people are ready for it. I'm one of the people that before Biden announced his plans, I said we should have age limits. And the age limit that I picked, yes, would have made him too old. In the Iowa Supreme Court, when you hit 72, they say it's just mandatory retirement. Thank you for your service. Enjoy your retirement. We should do that. And I think people are fed up. I think they're ready for the next generation of leaders. And I think a big piece of that is just sort of having this sense of wholesale brokenness for the political system. And when people look at that, I do think they understand that some of that has to do with the people who are there who have been there for too long. And I talk about this too in terms of the Democratic Party, right? I don't like the idea that we can only have two choices on our ballot. And it leads to complacency. It leads to people who feel like, oh, I'm entitled to this elected office just because I have the right letter behind my name and I live in the right neighborhood or the right county. And so I'm just going to have this. And then they don't have to solve our problems because there's no real competition for the job. I think that's one of the biggest problems that we face right now. It's like the base level problem. Pick a problem, right? Mental health issues, education issues, our economy. The reason that we don't have more effective, more frequent addressing of those issues is because elected officials know solving problems is hard. Demonizing my opponent to get reelected is easy.
In your conversations with voters, and I'm asking this question because so much of what we see is dictated by Beltway journalists and pundits. In your conversations with folks in your state, what's been the most resonant issue? What are you hearing kind of on the most constant basis is the thing that is moving voters one way or the other?
I do really think that high costs is a focus of real concern for people, affordability. I keep hearing about people whose health insurance premiums are going up double digits. Beyond that, in the state of Iowa, I think there's three issues that here are pretty unique but resonant. What people are concerned about water quality here in the state of Iowa. We've got very high nitrate levels. People are concerned about education. We just passed this school vouchers bill that has no oversight for hundreds of millions of dollars that's getting spent.
Yeah.
And again, I go back to just this sort of red flag of ridiculousness of, oh, the auditor's doing his job. Let's make it harder for him to find misspent money. People's faces turn when you tell them about that bill.
Yeah.
They're so angry about it. And it's not a thing that they think about all the time, but it's something that when you remind them of it, they're just like, right, these people are done. Throw the bums out.
Yeah. Rob, how can folks who are watching, listening, help your campaign?
robsand.com. If you want to join us and pitch in, that's great. We'd love to have your support. You can volunteer. You can donate at robsand.com.
And I would just echo that for anybody who's watching. Something is happening in Iowa. If ever there was a cycle to usher in some real change here, this is it. Also important to donate early. If anybody's considering donating and you're wondering whether it's worth it to do it now or to do it closer to the election, the closer we get to the election, the more expensive everything gets, the more saturated everything gets, the more inundated everybody gets, and the more time the other party will have to define Rob. So offering up these contributions now, donating to his campaign now, allows him to define himself so that there isn't a vacuum created where his opponents can define him. So again, I'll put that link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Rob, thanks for taking the time. Best of luck in the campaign trail.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me, Brian. Appreciate it.